And today's topic is
Filters.
filters. We'll be back in 30 seconds. All right, so everything you want to know about filters, what's the very first thing you need to know before you even go buy a filter?
Well, you got to attach it to your lens somehow.
Crazy glue?
Well, I mean, you can hold it, you can do that. But generally
Yeah.
what happens is most lenses, in fact, all lenses have a filter thread attachment on the front.
Correct. No, which is right. And so either on the box or on the lens itself, if you...
The nomenclature.
Yeah, and usually it has a 0 with a slash through it. So not all lenses are the same size.
No.
Please, no. Just because you're buying all the same brand lenses from the same camera, they're no. No. So this lens here, you probably can't see it over there, is a 72.
And this one here is a 62.
Right. And then if we go into even the smaller ones, so this is a 40.5.
Oh, that's itty bitty.
Oh yeah, it's 40.5. So you've got a lot of different sizes. So the first thing you have to do is you have to see what lens you're going to put the filter onto before you you run away and buy it. Now, two types of filters. One is a screw-on.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And you had one a second ago. Where'd you hide it?
Oh, right in here. Oh, yes, I put it back in its little protective case. Square rectangular filters.
Well, we call them a drop-in.
Exactly.
We call them a drop-in. So, you know, you've got two different styles. You can screw them right onto the end of the lens, or you can buy a bracket, and there's many different types, and use a drop-in system. Now, why would you want to use either or? I have both. I have screw-on and I have drop-in.
Same here, and it depends on what you're photographing and why you're photographing it, and you want to keep in mind that a lot of these filters, some effects you can't do with the screw-in ones, so you need to go into a drop-in or slide-in system like Bob explained here. Like, for example, if you're using a graduated filter.
Graduated filter.
Exactly.
I've never seen, well, I don't have one here, but you have a neutral graduated, variable graduated filter, but I don't have one. But
this one here. Right?
Well, this is interesting. Oh, that's a graduated too, eh?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, because you can get a half and half sort of idea as well. All right, so as I keep throwing those on the ground as I go through what we're topic of. Okay, again, different sizes, and they're available for all different cameras, all different lenses, which is great. The object is to be able to buy into one system. For me, it was to buy into one system and fit all my lenses. That's why I went Lee, you've gone high-tech.
Correct, yeah.
One of the less expensive models is the same sort of thing, is a Koken system. So we're over here. We've got them. Now with that, because all lenses are different sizes, you have the option of using a step up or a step down, and these come in multiple sizes as well.
That is true.
Okay, and the bracket comes apart as well. So you've got all sorts of different ways to attach them. And like I said, if I was shooting and I had purchased all, let's say, 65 millimeters, this is a circular polarizer, it's a 72 millimeter. If I had purchased everything but 72 millimeters, then I wouldn't be able to use it on my other camera. So that's one of the things. Well, I could. I'd just keep adding, like, that wouldn't work, but keep adding step ups or step downs on that side. It becomes pretty funky.
Yeah.
So basically, the holders are also a different size.
Correct.
So this is, I believe, a 67.
No,
That's a pro.
both these here are considered to be either 84 or 85 millimeter. What they're talking about is the actual width of the filter.
Okay,
right?
so yes.
That goes in the slots here.
So yeah.
So that's about an 84 millimeter system. The Koken system is the high tech here, and then
Well, they come in 4 different sizes.
Koken does now, yes.
Yes, they come in a 67 millimeter. I'm reading off the script because I wrote it down. So they do come in a smaller, so the 67 for the compact cameras, 84, which this one is, and yours is, which is for the compact and the APS-C size sensors. And then you get in the 100 millimeter, which I have here. As you can see, it's way bigger.
Yep.
All right, and this is the full frame APS-C size filter. And then you've got the 150 full frame and the medium format.
In Koken, it's 130, which I don't understand
130?
that they went that diameter, but because everyone else went 150.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so these come in different sizes as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are drop-ins compared to the other ones. Step down, stepped up rings, we've done that. Okay, what's the first filter you should probably look at purchasing?
Well, a lot of folks, when they're buying a camera, lenses, and whatnot, they're usually looking at probably a very basic filter like a UV or Skylight back in the day.
Skylight.
Those filters were generally used by people just to protect the front element of the lens, basically. Back in the days of film, though, what these filters did was they actually reduced the amount of ultraviolet radiation. They usually had a bit of a color cast. I think it was UV filters were yellow and Skylight filters were slightly pink.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, with film you'd see the difference, but with digital nowadays you don't need a color cast because
You can actually do it.
fiddle with that with your white balance.
Yeah, well, here's an insider tip for, do you have a UV filter on?
No. I do not.
It is highly suggested that you purchase a UV filter when you purchase your lens. I'm going to tell this story. I was out shooting with a couple of other photographers who were inside a building, and Buddy decided to take his 72-200 and stick it in his vest pocket. He knelt down, it popped out of his pocket, you heard a crash, and there was glass everywhere, and there was a hush all through the building. Ooh. The only thing that broke was his UV filter. So it saved his $2,000 lens. So it is worthwhile. Most times I don't have them on mine either. I usually
There's a reason,
do,
though.
But well, there is a reason. You want to tell the reason?
Sure. One of the reasons why I don't use them, and I think Bob doesn't use them, is because I do use a lot of filters to begin with. I don't see the point in actually having to take a filter off to put another filter on. So I do kind of like, I guess, economize a bit that way. I just don't leave it on. I do have UV filters, and I do use them, but I use them in certain circumstances. If I'm on a boat, I'm on the water, salt water especially.
Salt water especially.
Or in places where I feel I might lose the camera. In my case, my camera is weatherproof, so is the lens here, so I don't really need for rain per se, but it's always a good idea to have one anyway. Like Bob said, that's cheap insurance when you think about it. I've seen a lot of people who've dropped lenses and the UV filter was the one that got broken, not the lens.
Yeah, well, how many people have we seen come into the store with a chip in the glass?
That too.
Oh,
that too. Yeah.
Tons of people coming in. And the last person I looked at and said, well, there's nothing I can do with the chip in the glass. You know, when you bought your lens, you should have put the UV filter on. And she said, well, what's a UV filter? And I explained it to her, and she says, oh, I got one of those at home. It's like,
and
okay.
What's it cost to replace the front element?
Oh, yeah. Well,
about the cost of the lens.
The cost of the lens, yeah. So on that side of it, you know, well, it depends on the UV filter, you know, anywhere from $100 to $20, depending on the lens.
You do want a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing about the UV filter is, especially, is that it does cut down on hazing. So on that side of it, it's supposed to cut down on the haze, so you may want to use it all the time. So that's one of the ways you can do it as well. Now, good question in a question on you, because you brought it up. So when you put on a circular polarizer, you're taking off your UV filter?
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. I never did.
Well,
And-
one thing I've learned about this over the years doing photography, and especially with filters, is when you're buying a filter, it doesn't matter if it's UV or a polarizer or whatever it is, get one that's multi-coated like your lens is, because that multi-coating, what it does is it reduces lens flare. And when you put a piece of uncoated glass on your lens, you're introducing another piece of glass with an air pocket, and you're getting more chances of getting glare. And that'll actually ruin your photograph.
Ruin your photograph,
Yeah.
yeah. Valid point, yeah. That's one of those things. It's like, yeah. And you want less glass in front of your lens anyways. I do. And like you said, I'm using other filters anyways. Why do I need the UV filter? Just another one. But how many times have you seen people come into the store with their polarizer filter stuck to the lens and they can't get it off?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, if I've got the UV filter on and I've got the polarizer on, I can still take the UV filter and the polarizer off the lens unless you're really cranked on that as well. So that's another kind of safety point. So it's like, you'll learn this over time, because several times people have come in with their polarizer stuck to the lens and they can't get it off. And the reason for that is because the polarizer actually turns to polarize the lens, and they just keep turning the wrong way, and it just keeps tightening.
There's also a thing with dissimilar metals.
Well, yeah.
They tend to fuse a bit. So, you know, once they get stuck together like that, you need a way to get them. Sometimes you can use a filter wrench, or actually what I like to do is sometimes when I go to see the dentist, I ask them if they've got any extra dental dams. These are little pieces of rubber.
Oh, there we go, yeah.
Perfect thing to have in your bag. In fact, mine are like long gone. I got to get some more. But yeah, you just put them on top of the filter, and you just you get grip, and
Well, you get grip,
unscrew
yeah.
it.
A lot of times what I've done is I've used elastic bands,
That works too.
same sort of thing. Okay, so next one we're going to assess is actually the polarizer. So why would we want to use a polarizer?
There's a good question right there. A
Well,
lot
so
of reasons.
We get different ways of using polarizers too. This is another interesting subject. Look at the size of that puppy.
Look at pull yours out.
Yeah. Dirty. Yeah, okay.
Okay. These guys here, their number one purpose in life is to reduce reflections. And that has a really big effect on your photographs, right, Bob?
Yeah. Well, as a total, especially if you're shooting waterfalls.
Mm-hmm.
You're out shooting waterfalls. If you're shooting indoors, I use mine indoors.
Foliage.
Yeah, foliage is another thing. You want to reduce the reflections and the glare. Mm-hmm. But it's not only, well, a lot of us not only use it for that reason as well. It's also going to help me give me some saturation and contrast. So a lot of us use it to bring the greens out in the grass, or a lot of us will use it to get the sky, bring out the blueness in the sky. So there's a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different polarizers out there as well. As you've seen, we've had some out. With your system in mind, there's an extra ring in the front. So that's where I add my polarizer, and I can still add other filters to the back. On the Koken system, you and I were discussing this the other day.
And you've got the polarizer for that?
Yep. Infrared, I'm going to get the right one though. There's a polarizer for that one. And
that one goes in the back.
That one goes in the back, and it has little teeth on it so that I can turn it.
Ingenious.
Yeah. So it's just a different system, different manufacturer, different way of doing it and looking at it. So there is that as well.
Very nice.
Again, as we said, it's ideal for waterfalls. Basically, we got tons of waterfalls in Vancouver Island, all over.
Yes, skies, water, foliage, that kind of stuff. Landscape photography in general, it's probably going to be the number one most important filter in your bag. For me, if I had to pick one filter, it'd be a polarizer.
Yeah, I never leave home without a polarizer.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the number one filter that I would use all the time.
And you've got a couple of good ones here. I
yeah.
love this one here. This one here is actually a B+W, which is made by Schneider in Germany from what they call shot glass, not SHOT, but SCHOT, I think with an umlaut on top. That's a very special optical glass that they use. The lens rings are either aluminum or brass. I think this one here is brass, and they're actually very well-made filters. They're expensive, but when you think about it, you're getting basically the best optical quality you can get in front of your lens. Mine's a Sigma, and the Sigma makes some really good optical ones now too.
Oh yeah, no, I don't have any issues with, I love Sigma lenses, so I don't have any issue with Sigma lenses as well. But again, you know, they come in all different sizes. On that side of it, different ways to fit the lenses, so on that side of it, it's good that way. Again, caution when using them. You have to turn them, twist them. So on that side of it, it can be, you can't lock it on. I've seen it, I've actually done it, but I was smart enough to get it off.
Well, the original polarizers didn't have a spinning ring.
Oh, didn't they?
No, you had to unscrew them.
Really?
Yeah. That was way back in the early days.
Early days?
And that's why they started falling off cameras. So someone came up with the ingenious idea of actually making them spin within the actual mount, which is kind of cool.
Smarter way of doing it.
Yeah.
Much smarter way than doing it. Okay, neutral density filters.
Another favorite subject.
Well, yeah, we have two different types. I haven't got a variable neutral density, but it works similar to,
Exactly.
you know, and as you turn it, it will adjust the density, and they come in different stops, 2 to 8, 1 to 6, and other things like that. I don't own one. I don't know whether that's good or bad. Mostly I use graduated neutral density, and probably you do too.
Yes.
And how old are those?
These Koken ones?
Yeah, how old are those?
How long have I had them? they're beat up. I've had these guys since probably at least the 90s, maybe prior to that.
So they don't wear out.
No.
So if you can buy decent ones.
Actually, if I give you the list of cameras I've used these with over the years, it's amazing how long these have stood up the test of time.
Okay.
Quite a few.
And, well, they come in different stops.
They sure do.
And they come in a hard edge, and they come in a graduated edge, or a soft edge. I prefer the soft edge.
Yep.
And they're confusing in the way they mark them. So that's a 0.6, which is a 2-stop. There's a little bit of memorizing in photography, which is really weird. So this one here is a 0.3. What have you got?
I've got a 2-stop and a 3-stop.
Yeah. So, you know, it's one of those things, because I bought a 1-stop, a 3-stop, 2-stop, and a 3-stop. And they're marked in 0.3, 0.6, 0.9. So you just have to know that. But with the system that I have, same as you have, I can double them up.
You sure can.
Which I think is just awesome.
Yep.
So now I've got a 5-stop,
Graduated
neutral density. So where would I use these?
Oh, well,
Don't
that's
say in my
easy.
camera. On your camera.
Well, there's always one in the crowd. The reason why these guys are made the way they are is for use when you're actually dealing with primarily landscape photography. You've got a very bright sky and a very darker foreground. One reason the soft edge is actually quite popular is that because if you don't have a very well-defined horizon line, let's say you got mountains and stuff like that, or trees, the soft edge actually is going to be a little bit better. They do make hard edge. Those are really good for very well-defined horizon lines where you can line it right up on that horizon. But generally around here, because we got mountains and such and trees, the soft edge actually is a really good one. And even in cities, if you're photographing in a city and you want to use a graduated neutral density filter, a soft edge is going to be a lot better than the hard edge.
I think so. Or soft edge is you have to have a definite horizon.
Correct.
You have to have a definite horizon to kind of do that. And it's like, yeah, well, I don't always have that defined. There are like mountains and trees always in the way. One of the other things you may not be aware of, it doesn't have, and it's something I learned last year. So again, always learning new stuff, is Sony puts out an app. I don't know if the Olympic does.
No.
Sony puts out an app where I can take an image and have it done in 3 different exposure settings. How well that app works, I don't know. I've never used it. I've got filters. I rely on the filters. I try to get as much done in camera as possible. You can also go into Lightroom, and you can make changes in Lightroom or any other of the software. I know Online can do the same sort of thing, but for me, and you and I agree on this, a lot of times I want to get as much done in camera as I can. I want to be able to see a good, decent starting picture before I take it into Photoshop or anything else.
This is what I call the craft of photography, right? So, you know, I've had people say, well, you know, they got the app, you can do this, you can do that. You can do it in Lightroom, you can do it in Photoshop. That's correct. The more you get done in camera, though, that's the filters, everything else, that's all part of the whole craft of photography. I mean, we got into photography because we love everything about it. And this is part of the whole thing. When I shot film, actually part of that was actually working in the darkroom. I love that too. But preferably, being out shooting was the way I wanted to be.
Well, no, I understand that as well. But again, it's like, yes, you can, you know, if I can't get it done in camera, then maybe I can get it. If I can get it done in camera, then I know I've got the shot before I ever leave my area. Before I leave the particular area that I'm shooting in.
Yeah.
Then I know I've got it done. I don't have to worry about it. So those neutral density filters. And honestly, if you're doing landscaping, polarizers and graduated neutral density filters, you need them in your kit.
Yeah.
You need them in your kit. Must be in the kit. Okay, now for the big guns.
Oh.
The stuff we like.
The stuff we really like.
You got one? What's yours?
This is a 10-stop.
Okay.
And you got what?
I got a 10-stop.
10-stop.
Yeah.
And I also have a 4-stop in here.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at picking up a 5-stop.
And these are solid neutral density filters.
Well, I'm wondering if you can, I'll put my hand behind it. You see nothing. So this is actually a 10-stop neutral density filter. Why would we want to use that?
Oh, that's easy.
Give me 15 reasons.
15 reasons. Well, we talked about, probably not so much for waterfalls, unless it was an extremely bright day. A lot of the problems you have when you're out taking photographs, especially if you're dealing with, waterfalls as an example. I don't know if I use a 10-stop necessarily, but it depends on the situation. Where you want to use a smaller aperture to get depth of field, but you also want to have a longer exposure time. If you're photographing water, you want to get it smoothed out. That's the number one reason why you'd use one of these things here. The 10-stop, though, would be really useful for really long exposures because it really can increase your exposure time quite a bit. And with this camera, this is one thing I want to talk about too, I get the same amount of depth of field at f8 as you do at f16.
Right.
So with that, I'm invariably shooting with a higher shutter speed. I have to use a neutral density filter to bring that down.
Well, that's another topic for another day, but
You've got a
point
it's a
there.
Very valid point.
Yeah, okay. Most of these items come with a cheat sheet.
Love cheat sheets.
Yeah, so it does, and also you can, there's an app.
Or a cheater app.
Well, there's an app for this as well. So if I set my camera up and I'm at, look at this, if I'm at 60 of a second, if I put my 10-stop on, I'm going to have a 15-second exposure. So that's what I'm looking at. Lars mentioned smoothing out water. One of the things I like to do, I'm the opposite. I like to smooth out my clouds. I like cloudscapes.
That too. Oh,
So
yeah, about that.
that's
Definitely.
for me. If I'm shooting out in the field and I'm not getting exactly everything I want to do, I will probably throw on the 10-stop and see if I can get some cloudscapes going on and running it that way as well. So these come, again, 10-stop. We have 10-stop, but they're also a 5-stop. There's also a 15 and a 20-stop. And a 20-stop, I'm not exactly sure how. That's a brick wall in front of your lens, isn't it?
Uber stopper.
That's an Uber stopper.
Yeah.
That's an Uber stopper.
It's a 4-stop. You can actually see through it.
Yeah, okay. So that's basically a rundown on filters. Again, there's 2 different types of mounts. Be aware of that. Be aware that you've got to know what lens it's going to go on before you know what filter you're going to buy. I think a mixture of both, the same as we have, is probably the best way of doing it. There are some expensive ones, Lee filters, Stingray. is pretty expensive, some less expensive, but just as good, and I'm looking at them now as the high-tech filters.
Yeah.
And then Koken is another one. If you want to get started in filters, this is what I started with. I still have my Koken filters.
Yeah.
I still have my Koken filters. I still use them. They're great. They're a good way to get started with. And you can buy them in kits. That's why I would grab this one. You can actually buy them in a kit.
Yeah, they're a lot less expensive than some of the other brands out there, and it's a great way to get into it inexpensively. I'm still using Koken quite a bit because there's no need for me to buy the more expensive ones. These ones work well. And their filters, like Lee, I think they're made from they call them resin, which is a photographic resin, which is photographic plastic.
Yeah, it's kind of a plastic.
Yeah.
So again, do your research, see what your budget is, and make sure that you carry filters. I'm never without my filters.
Nope.
Always carry them across. Anyways, we're going to run. We're over time. Sorry. But we'll see you next time, and thanks for watching Who Said Photography. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.